The third question that you must ask yourself is, do you know the history of the Jewish people? Now, you can think about this question. Do you know the history of the Israelites in the Old Testament? Central claim that many in the Black Hebrew Israelite sects or camps, or even those who may be informally connected, is a belief that people are affected by the evil of the transatlantic slave trade are indeed lost tribes of Israel. It's a common stream. They believe those who were impacted by the transatlantic slave trade and brought over to America are the lost tribes of Israel.
Okay.
They believe those.
Okay, stop. Now, the history of Israelite nation, every time Israel, the first captivity Israel went into was because of sin. Okay, and I'm going to tell you what that sin was. Most people don't get it. Hated on their brother Yosef because of the dream he had of him being a great ruler. And they murdered him, not literally, but they murdered him in the eyes of his father, Yaakov, right? Whose name was changed to Israel. So they murdered him. And so now, if you are of the mind to believe that nobody had the law before the nation of Israel was birthed, then you don't know. And if you don't read the other books, you wouldn't know that. But Shaul makes mention of it in Romans 1, which we covered already, that they already knew. So those people in the days of Noah knew the laws. That's why when you take out those books, like the book of Enoch, which explains that Enoch his father Methuselah, these were men that knew the laws of Yah, that taught the inhabitants of the earth at the time, predating Abraham, predating Isaac, Isaac, and Yaakov. So when you throw those books out, then you don't know that these people had the law. They had the law. The Most High didn't get to make them without excuse. We read that in Romans 1. So now the point I'm making is this. When Israel, every time Israel sinned, and you can see it every time Israel did that which was evil in the sight of Yah, number one, primarily they worship other idols. Some Christians worship their pastors. You don't get into that book, crack that book open and learn the book. Whatever pastor says is the law. That's human worship. Check and challenge anybody that's telling you something that's contrary to what the book says. That's how you prevent yourself from being into human worship, right? So, every time Israel transgressed Yah, they went into slavery. Proof of that is in the book of Judges chapter 3. Every time Israel did wicked in the sight of Yah, he allowed the captives to come and take them into captivity. That's in the book of Judges. Then you go, after this kingdom gets established, and King Shlomo, King James writers call him Solomon. When Solomon came on the scene, then what happened? The kingdom got great, but then when Solomon got old, he took all of those women of other nations that were his wives and built altars of worship for their deities in Jerusalem. What happened after that? The prophets came on the scene and started warning the nation of Israel, turn away from idolatry and turn away from disobeying the laws and obey the laws. That's why we have Deuteronomy 28. The Most High gave the nation of Israel warning in Deuteronomy 28 said, if you don't keep this covenant, you're going to be sold as slaves. So Deuteronomy 28 is not a one-time deal. It's a repetitive deal. Every time Israel went and disobeyed the Most High, they went into captivity. So thus you have what? After Israel became a great kingdom, in 2 Kings chapter 17, the king of Assyria came and took the northern tribes into Babylon and brought all the Babylonians and all the other people that were in the territory of the land where Abraham came from, where they worship all these strange deities. They brought them deities in the land of Israel. Okay. Most High had mercy on them because he had a plan. He was bringing the Messiah. So he allowed them under King Artaxerxes, I think that's how you say his name, to allow under Ezra and Nehemiah, Netanyahu, to bring Israel back from Babylonian captivity. The southern tribes, the northern tribes didn't come back, but the southern tribes came back. And so they did a roll call in the book of Netanyahu or Nehemiah. You can look at the names of the tribes that came back from exile, right? After that, Israel, during the times of the Greece, when Alexander, you can read about that in the Maccabees. That's why they take these books out, so you don't see the parallel of Deuteronomy 28 being repetitive. The works of Josephus, he details, so he agrees and confirms with what's written in Maccabees. So when the Greeks disobeyed, when the Greeks came on the scene, and after Alexander had died, Ptolemies, the Greeks, they came in there and they tried to get the Israelites to walk in disobedience and do everything that they to violate the laws of the Most High, right? They did it, and then what happened? The Greeks took them into Egypt in slavery, in ships. It says it in the third Maccabees. Okay? Israel was restored under the Maccabees. Then Israel did the same thing. By the time the Messiah came on the scene, they did the same thing. And what happened? Israel was taken into captivity under the Roman authorities, and they was taken back into Egypt. So Israel got into, some of them fled, some of them were led captivity into Africa. They got into Africa, and once they got into Africa, they embraced another deity that was brought to the sons of Ishmael, the Arab nations in Saudi Arabia under Mecca, and that was the last captivity. So Israel went into captivity into the transatlantic slave trade.